This is Playing and Win with Mark Henderson Leary and my good friend Brad Freyer. Good morning. You know what just occurred to me, Brad?
No.
We don't tell people. We don't tell people what the show's about.
All right,
It's not actually about playing.
Do we know what this show is about, Mark?
Yes. For example, what do you think it's about?
I'd like to think that we try every week to bring some best practices to the table regarding sales and leadership. I do know that some weeks we probably do a better job than others. But if you're going to play the game, you might as well play to win. And so we want people to pick up some tools to perform at their best.
You know, I think that's exactly right. That was great. It's phenomenal. I think it's about. I think it's exactly right. Playing to, if you're going to play, win. And what we're doing is we're running businesses, and an essence of that is leadership, which is sort of like my corner of the ring, and selling. And how those come together. There's all the execution that goes with that, and we talk about all of that. But I think that's just this idea of selling, communication, and leading well, bringing a great product, bringing your best self onto the field, and taking home a trophy.
Yeah. It's funny because I had and I probably told you this story before. It's one of my favorites, but I had a basketball coach, and he used to always tell us before practice. He's like, "There's three ways you can do something. You can do it. You can do it well, or you can do it as well as it can possibly be done." And he'd say, if you're going to step foot on this court today, I want you to at least try to do it as well as it can possibly be done. And that was the mindset of, put everything into every rep, just try to be the best at everything you do. And whether it's leadership or sales or basketball.
There's a question in there though, that needs to be asked. And I believe, and that is, am I stepping on the court for the right reasons? And am I willing? And is this the right? Do I want to play at the highest level at this thing, or how did I get here? Did somebody tell me I need to be here, and I'm doing it because out of obligation? Should I sell something different? Should I run a different business? Should I be doing something entirely different? Because should I be in a place where it is inspiring to play it at that high championship level?
Well, I mean, in its purest form, even when I played basketball, I played it because I loved the sport. I had friends that I played with. It was I just really, really loved the sport. But honestly, there wasn't this conscious decision every day to be the best at the sport. I felt like if I showed up and I practiced, I was the kind of kid that, if I wasn't in school or at practice, I was probably playing basketball somewhere. I'd be at the city parks or in my own driveway or whatever. But I don't know that there was a whole lot of deliberateness around the behavior, right? And so fast forward to the professional setting, how many of us have deliberateness to the behavior? We get up every day, it's Monday morning, it's 8:15, it's 8:35. I've already lost 20 minutes of my day. It's 8:35. You're rolling into the week. The week starts now. What are you doing today? Not only what are you doing on your behaviors, but how are you going to make sure that your behaviors are being done as well as they can possibly be done? Are you just going to kind of roll into the week and take what's thrown at you, or are you going to have a deliberateness to your attack?
Well, and I agree. And every time you say something like this, it is my own learnings on this. Life isn't about pushing hard on everything. You have to choose. And I do believe it's balanced between the observation of, is this the right training program? Like, I'm ready to summit Everest. Whose idea was it to summit Everest? Like, I hate mountains. Like, let's not do that.
Only the ones that can kill me.
Right. So if that's what that inspires you, then that's the right path. And I do think I think that as the commitment to excellence goes up, the commitment to observation about alignment with yourself, your purpose, your highest contribution also needs to go up with it, because the sacrifice goes up. And sacrifice to me is defined by doing without and saying no to things because there's something of a higher order. that, you're doing without something because there's something that you want more, and the want more or value more has to be clear. It needs to not be somebody else's, and it needs not to be accidental. And I think that's a big problem in motivation, where people they get into a sales job, and there's a sales leader who's telling them what to do, and they're like, this sucks, I don't like this. Like, well, do you like the product? Do you like the people? Do you like the core values? Like, no. Like, well, no wonder you're not motivated. This isn't fun for you. You should get into a place where it's fun and the competition inspires you to play at a higher level, and you think it's worth it to do that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, God, there was a quote that I heard recently from a high school football recruit, of all places, a high school football recruit that was talking about, and I wish I could remember how he said it and what his name was, because I would love to give him credit for it. But his message basically was that once you've decided to achieve your goals, you're going to lose you're going to lose friends.
Yeah.
Because when you're more committed to doing what's important to you, you're not doing what everybody else wants to do, because it requires sacrifice. It requires that diligence and the mindset and the focus, the time. So I'm gonna have to go find that, because that kid was well spoken.
Well, that's so true. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life, is that, I've heard so much talk of hard work and all this, and I had so little up close mentorship around what hard work looks like and what sacrifice looks like. It's all very conceptual until somebody says, hey, yeah, if you've got 5 friends and you level up, 3 of those friends might not share the passion or whatever or value that you do, and may react negatively, may criticize your commitment. You say, hey, guy, what are you doing not going out on a Friday night? It's like, well, I'm studying for, law school. It's like, man, that's stupid. Like, wait, you got to think that through. And if these are your buddies, you're like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I am working too hard. Maybe I'm not enjoying life, as opposed to like, am I willing to sacrifice my childhood friends for a higher purpose? And if you don't know your purpose, and if you don't know that really your calling is going to law school and leveling up, then it's going to be hard for you to tell those friends that, see you next time.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, it's and it's not just working hard. It's working hard with a purpose, working hard with intentions, working hard to do things well, and working hard to do them the right way, versus just, because I grew up in with the mindset of you just have to work hard to succeed, and that's a bit of a misstatement, because working hard is not going to guarantee success, especially if you're rowing in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
You're digging a hole in the wrong spot with the wrong tool. There's a lot of people who work hard that are just chasing their tail.
My friend Mark O'Donnell, who I think he copied this from somebody. He said something to the effect of, "You got to be so good you can't be ignored," and that all the things that we're saying come into that. Like, you have to look at, do you have the talent? Do you have the discipline? Is it inspiring? And, it's not that complicated in the end. If you're so good, you can't be ignored. Like, success is coming your way. But there's a lot of barriers that have cut through to be so good you can't be ignored.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite quotes is, hustle till you don't have to be introduced. That's one of my favorites. So, well, you got a lot going on. You got something big going on this week, don't you?
Yeah,
working hard and working smart.
Working hard. It's been a crazy month, and it's sort of capping off. So, fortunate enough that this year the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System Conference, the conference for companies running on EOS. I mean, people who do what I do meet 4 times a year anyway, but this is for people who run companies and the consumers and the users of the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's in Houston this Friday, or Thursday and Friday. Most of it, the conference is on Thursday and Friday, and I have a little speaking part on Thursday afternoon. So I'm excited. I've been working for that.
Congratulations! That's great.
Thank you. It's and it's an interesting topic. It was one kind of that I didn't think much about when I accepted the topic, and I've been doing some inner work on it about the concept of hitting the ceiling. And I've taught the concept for years. And kind of hitting the ceiling is the idea that every business, every department, every individual, at some point, just get stuck. You're just cruising along and then you're not. And that's a normal thing. And I think a lot of us I certainly, when I grew up, expected that every year was going to be a little better than the last, a little more profitable than the last. My first job, it was $4 an hour. My next job was $5 an hour. Next job was like $6 an hour. And I'm like, man, this is just a linear trajectory to rich. I see this happening. And that's not what happened in life. And that's not what happens in business. And so there are 5 leadership abilities we teach to consistently break through that ceiling. And they're very straightforward. And I think, honestly, I've given them some lip service for a number of years, and I've really had to think through how they manifest in the world and life and in the tools. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing, my thoughts on and experiences and how they fit in the EOS tools. So it's pretty cool. Can
I ask you to preview what those 5 are, or is that something
absolutely.
You want to save until Thursday?
No. So here's the deal: if you've paid for the conference, then you can be there in person. But that's sold out. So like if you want to hear it, you have to be there and already have a ticket, or you can join virtually. There's still some virtual tickets left for people who want to do that. But they're simplified.
But you need to be an EOS client to be able to even pay for it. Or can anybody tuning in right now sign up for it?
It's a good question. So I've recently introduced or started some people teaching them the system and whether it makes sense for them to join the conference if they're in
infancy.
Infancy, it's sort of like, it could be a distraction. But certainly if you're a few months in and you're working through, it's a great thing to participate. If you're even just a few months in and when you really want to be immersed in the tools, the mindset, and great leaders who want to be their best, it's a phenomenal thing.
Got it.
There's no spoilers because we're going to dig in a great depth when I go through the talk. But it's the leadership abilities are simplify, delegate, predict, systemize, and structure. And you just kind of
yeah. Slow down. All right, say it again.
People can slow the video down, man.
I know, but I can't. This is live. I want to be active listening. I want to be engaged and understand what you're telling me. So
no, of course. I was going to slow it down. Simplify,
like that.
Delegate.
Predict.
Systemize. And structure.
I like it. All right. So what does that mean?
It's a lot, right? So simplify is the idea of less is more, and that complexity exponentially increases in an organization as it grows. And so the obsession with simplification and simplicity in an organization is a skill that you have to develop to get you from one level of your organization to the next. And then you got to develop it again, because every time you grow, every time there's success, there's more opportunity and more complexity, and you're going to have to kind of work this back and forth. Simplify, delegate. Delegation is the idea of getting it off your plate, right? Highest and best use. But when we unpack the skill set there, it's not just about telling people what to do. There starts to become some real change in the paradigm of how an organization runs, from an individual contributor, sort of technician, becoming a manager, becoming a leader, and then becoming a leader of leaders, and then having a whole leadership team that is doing this. And so understanding where you are in the evolution and getting better and better. And every year you've got to get good, and the next year you got to get even better. Prediction is the idea of, oh man, I had so many great lessons learned in prediction. One was I started working with a budget coach, and he's been on my podcast, a guy named Matthew Paul. And I remember the moment he said, "All right, so what you got coming up expenses wise in the next 3 months?" I'm like, "I don't know, whatever." He says, "Well, is Thanksgiving coming up?" "Yep." "How much is that going to cost?" "I don't know." "Okay, give me a number." We put it into the budget, and then it was the next thing. "All right, so Christmas, you have that?" "Yeah." "How often does that happen?" "Pretty much every year." "Do you have a budget line item for that?" I don't. "That's weird." If you can look to the future even a little bit, the kind of things we can plan for and the surprises we can eliminate are amazing. So in our EOS world, anything 90 days and beyond, that's prediction. That's our long-term prediction. And we're making sure we're setting rocks and all got tools to go with that. But also there's short-term prediction that every single week we're going to have obstacles that are going to throw us off. And so we have other tools, level 10 and issue solving, that talk about how to make sure every single week we land where we expect.
Got it.
Simplify, delegate, predict. Systemize is, the idea of process, really. Systemize is you cannot be hostage to the judgment of individuals. We have to figure out which things that, the Four Seasons is famous for the quote, you must systemize the predictable and humanize the exceptional. You have to have both. It's not about being rigid. It's about putting yourself in control of this repetitive things and making sure, if there's a sales process, if there's a way we do it, if there's questions we could ask every single time and get consistent results and have really happy customers and allow ourselves to be our best in the gaps. It's super powerful for organizations. And then structure. Structure is the concept of making sure we build our organization in a simple, clear, efficient way so people know what their roles are. And I just say that if you compare structure versus unstructured, the NFL, if you think about the football game, have you ever tried to explain to somebody who doesn't understand football, like how it works?
No, I haven't, but that's an interesting exercise.
Anytime I have a room of like four more people, I say, has anybody here tried to explain to somebody who doesn't understand football how football works? And they're like, yeah. And I go, how'd it go? It was terrible. They have it just looks like guys smashing into each other. Yeah. I say, has anybody ever had a difficult time explaining or understanding how the game of baseball works? No, it's pretty straightforward. Like you stand on the guy stands on the pitcher's mound, throws the ball. The guy with the stick swings at it. And so the exact rules that's more complicated, but you could get a pickup game of baseball going pretty fast, and a game of like NFL style football is like, it's a disaster. And so when we can write the rules for business, and we need our businesses to be much closer to baseball and efficient and decide, how many outfielders do we need? Is it 7? Is it 2? Probably 3. Right. How big is the field? And when we approach our business with that same approach, it allows us to make it easy enough to see how the business operates, and we can be very efficient with our time and resources. And so those are the abilities we describe and talk into to cut through this idea, because the genesis of this concept is hitting the ceiling, which is based on an article published in called Evolution and Revolution in Business by a guy named Larry Greiner, published in 1998 as a reproduction update to the original 1972 article. So there's history here that every business goes through these evolutions, and then they get stuck, and then something has to crack open. And there's this concept, and I'm going to sort of unpack this in greater detail, that every organization as it grows starts to move in one direction. One is either toward autonomy and delegation and empowerment of the organization, and then at some point that kind of starts to not work well, and you're too off a center, and something dramatically has to change, and we got to point the ship back towards control, and we start unifying our leadership and getting clarity on what we're trying to do as a centralized organization. And eventually that starts to get too locked in, and we got to crack that open. We got to lean back towards freeing the organization to be more interdependent. And what it ends up happening is each of these evolutions of raising the organization's awareness and consciousness and functionalness of kind of tacking. If you've ever been sailing, so like if imagine if where you're going with your business is directly upwind, you have to go directly upwind, but the sailboat won't go directly upwind. It'll go sort of directly upwind, and so you go to the right, you go to the starboard, and then eventually you've got to tack, and you've got to go to the port, and you've got to tack back again, and you've got to go up. It's the same exact thing in a business. So we increase our functionalness of central control to a simple level, and then that doesn't work. And then we got to bring more people into the organization and enroll them and empower them, and then that eventually has to kind of tack back to how do we evolve that to the next level, and we do that kind of forever. It's a forever inevitable thing that the organization kind of swings back from control to decentralization. Yeah. That is a pretty highly concentrated essence of what I'm going to be talking about.
I'm sweating. Wow. No, that's great. I mean, because a couple of things really jumped out to me. Number one is simplicity, right? I mean, because when you combine simplicity, systematize, and structure, those are often competing words, right? I'm working with 2 companies right now, helping to get their sales structure in place, but also actually the manufacturing company that I'm an owner in, we're working on the processes there as well right now. But simplicity, oftentimes, and maybe you can speak to this, simplicity oftentimes gets lost in the systematizing and structure because people want to overthink it, versus no, let's keep it simple. Let's get it in place. Let's start working it. And then if it needs to have pieces added to it or expounded upon. But do you find that simplicity and systematize and structure tend to compete?
Well, they're all interdependent. So yeah. So if I were to generalize it, that centralization effect is the urge to simplify. We got too many things happening. And then we're like, but we're too rigid. And so we need to empower people to be creative. And that sort of moves us towards complexity. And so there's a highly complex interplay of the organization enterprise-wide is sort of moving back and forth between simplification and complexifying and complexifying is a word I just made up, but the idea is it's discovery. It's discovery and analysis of details and learning. Learning is a complex enterprise. And then once we've learned it, we've got to distill it back down. And that's sort of the pendulum swing. So every organization is doing the same kind of thing. And when I say interdependent, we got to have a structure that is simple. We're going to simplify and our processes. We've got to simplify our processes, and which is we've got to systemize around this. Yeah. But there is, Einstein's quote is everything should be, and this quote is so funny because everything should be as simple as it possibly can, but not simpler. And as a kid, I heard that quote. I thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. It's like, if it's as simple as it could be, you can't make it simpler. Didn't you just say that? I mean, I don't understand why you repeated yourself. Turns out he didn't actually say that, but he did actually say things like that. And the essence of that is it was largely applied to art. He felt that art needed to be at its essence simplified to the point where it could be, but if you needed to bring the magic, and you should not try to reduce art and similar things beyond the point that took the magic out. But he also applied it to science, and he felt that science needed to be dependent upon the rigor of the data, and that if you simplify something beyond where it starts chopping off reality, then you've made a mistake. All that to say, if I come to an organization that does something pretty simple, and they just put in pipe, it's a simple organization, you should address that. If you're an organization that has significant research and development, and you've got several disciplines that come together that are very high value, because complexity is expensive. So if you're going to bring complexity in your organization, and you need to bring complexity in the organization because it has a whole division. We started working with a company, they decided they have a major function. It's nothing but science. And it makes sense for them. Because complexity is expensive, it better be exceedingly high value. And for them it is. And so you've got to understand what your cost benefit to your complexity and simplicity is. And it's a constant evolution of a little more and a little less. And being very aware.
That's interesting.
I have taken all of this time with this, man. You got
me going. No, it's great. I'm loving it. This is a great topic because all 5 bullet points are ones that at any given time a leader is struggling with, right? I mean, delegation is a huge one. I've got several clients who are the stereotypical wagon wheel of leadership, right? And for the people watching or listening that don't know what the wagon wheel leader is, it's that leader that every single spoke touches them. So every decision that comes through the company, every strategy, every conversation, they want to be in the middle of it. But if we hire people, we have to empower people. And the only way that we're going to continue to grow as individuals and as an organization is if we use our time for the highest ROI usage. And some of these conversations, some of these decisions, they need to be delegated to our team, who we hire and develop, and we should be trusting. So delegation is a huge one.
But it's a skill. That's the thing that I'm really trying to learn. It's not just a choice. It is kind of a choice to commit to being on the path, but it doesn't just mean it's off my plate. It means now I need to change my thinking to how do I manage leaders, coach leaders, and delegation is an ongoing activity because delegation, Abdication is totally different. Like I gave it to somebody, I never looked back. That's not how it works. We really have to develop as leaders this ability of how do I keep communication and expectations flowing as my new job as the manager leader, whose job it is to ensure that people are doing what I ask them to in the best way. My new job is delegation. It's not
my job is delegation. My job is communication. My job is accountability. My job is, I like that. That's interesting. I haven't heard it put that way before.
Well, I've encountered it because for myself, I kept getting stuck. And so I figured out, it's not just that like I write a note, hand it off, and then forget about it. Like that's not how it works. That's how I get it back, because it wasn't done right, and so no one was taking it, and I realized it had to be in the front burner. It had to be my main attention.
Well, yeah, because delegation is only good if you have accountability.
Yeah,
right? Because eventually it breaks down.
It goes back to that purpose.
What was the third one?
Prediction.
Okay. So when you said that one, the imagery that popped into my head first and foremost was, how are we driving the car? And this is the imagery I often talk to leaders. Are you driving the car by looking at the edge of the hood, right? You're looking at just what's right in front of you, and you're trying to be as reactive as possible, not to hit the pothole or to catch the exit or to not crash into the car that stopped short in front of you. Or are you driving by looking at the horizon? Right? Do you have your eyes up and you're seeing the warning signs? You're seeing brake lights. You're seeing your exit signs. You're seeing potholes, debris, whatever it might be. And as leaders, prediction is a lot to. I would assume has a lot to do with our perspective. Where are we looking? How do you visualize it?
Well, it's a lot. It's the short-term and long-term that Gino brought to the table has been so helpful for me, because you do have short-term and long-term. And long-term is that idea of, why are we doing this? Are we in the right game? And asking this, at its shortest term, long-term is best embodied by this. I love it. When a company sets rocks in the fall or the winter, and we come together in the January timeframe, and they're a new team to this, and it's so predictable. Yeah, we set these goals, and I just, with Christmas and Thanksgiving, we just didn't have the time. I'm like, that was a surprise. That's never happened before. And so once they learn that, they can start asking the question of, okay, seriously, what
no, seriously.
Thanksgiving is coming. What do you need to do? Are you going to hit the goals? What does that mean? Are you going to need to send people home? Is this time for good vacation planning? Do you need to adjust your costs? You can't, when you start putting your high beams on, to use your metaphor, and you start thinking, and you think further about you've done the trip planning, you know where you're going, you can really say like, okay, we're going to run out of gas right around, Kingman, Arizona, and we can stop and we can see the Grand Canyon, and we can take advantage of the journey that is not a surprise. All the things we need to know about this journey, many of the things that we need to know about the journey are right out there. Yeah. And then the short-term prediction is kind of like, that we got a flat tire.
Yeah, well, and the flat tire not only affects where we are short term, but it also affects where we are long term. And it's okay to adjust the route, or adjust the schedule.
And you got to be ready for that. You got to have a plan for
we're not going to make it all the way to. We're not going to make it all the way to Orlando because we had engine trouble. So instead, we're going to stop in Mississippi and spend the night there, and then finish the drive tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we're basically out of time. I hogged it all.
That's great. It's a good topic.
I don't want to forget about you. Wednesday morning, 8:30 a.m. You were speaking at the wonderful organization, the Entrepreneurs Organization here in Houston as well. Yeah. What are you talking about, man?
We're going to be talking about breaking the rules to close more sales.
Breaking rules. I want to break the rules. I want to break the rules.
EO topic, right? I mean, EOers love to get outside of the norm and do things different. So that's what we're going to bring to the table. We're going to talk about, what the typical salespeople are doing and what the buyers are used to experiencing, and how can we do things differently so that we have different power and control of the process. So that's going to be the overarching theme.
Well, so I just happy that we can potentially break the rules, and if there's an upside, so much the better.
That's right. No, I'm a long time EO member, been on the board. loved the group, loved the organization. Hadn't been involved the last 2 years, and so I'm really excited to get in front of the group and see a bunch of old friends, and hopefully bring some value so that they leave after 2 hours and go, man, that was a good use of my time.
Yeah, so if you're an EO member here in Houston, I definitely recommend you check it out. If you're not familiar with EO or Entrepreneurs Organization in Houston, you should check it out. It's a great organization, and maybe this is if you're interested in membership, maybe you can get an invite to it. And actually, reach out to us if you don't know anything about it and want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're an EO member outside of Houston, or if you're not an EO member and you're outside of Houston, you should check into that as well.
Agreed. Yeah, great organization. A lot of value comes from being a member of the EO.
Well, we are totally out of time. I'll let us go over, and we're going to run over our time here. Is there anything we forgot, anything you want to add to this before I cut us off?
No, I think you did a fantastic job, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday.
Yes, we'll see you next time on Plain to Win with Mark and Brad.